Hello, and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight's episode number 61. We are reading Infinite by Jeremy Robinson. Tonight I'm joined by Ray and Sean, and this is not a coincidence or an accident why it is these two gentlemen. And that's specifically because of the book we read. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Any better, I'd be illegal.
um,
In fact,
so
States.
in this session of our round robin reading, this was my pick. I honestly was not sure what I was originally going to pick. I think originally I was going to continue us on the Solar Clipper series, and we actually, I think that's our next book or maybe not. I'll have to look. I know we're reading at least the next one, either next month or a month after. And I was like, oh, we'll just forward it ahead a little bit more, and I'll go ahead and pick another one of the books. And Audible had been recommending this book to me for quite a while, and I was like, oh, I read something different. I got the credit and got the book and went through it and just was like had my mind blown and was just like this. We'll get into it, but I was like, okay, no, I need to know what Sean and Ray think about this because I have to be able to talk about this book with someone else. So, quick impression. I did enjoy the book. I have listened to it at least twice now. It is interesting. There's a lot happening to it. But yeah, I did find the book enjoyable. It is what I would consider a true roller coaster because it just keeps going. Like every time you turn around, something else is happening, and it's just like I've got to find. Like I had a hard time, pausing it to do something else because I was like, I've got to find out what happens next because this can't get any. No, it just got crazier. So, Ray, initial thoughts?
I don't think it's going to make my rotation.
Understandable.
It was an interesting read, but yeah, I don't think it's going to make my rotation of like Bubbverse and all the other things that we've got going on. Maybe like a Skippy book, but but yeah, this one it was a once read and okay, I've got it, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if this will probably be like one of those things that I've already gone through some of the other things and I'm like, I'm just kind of mix it up and throw something in there. So, but no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. I have to read this one every year or every so often. So, Sean.
I enjoyed it. I have a hard time with the pacing of the book. I found it's choppy. It is not one of his smoother books.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed to be all over the map, and the whole book is like that. It's not just like chunks. It's the whole friggin' thing, and after a while, it's okay. What's next? What's next? So the concept was pretty good. Well, some of them, but if you're a Jeremy Robinson fan, it wasn't one of his top books. It was still entertaining. So
What's interesting is you say this is not one of his top books. Number one, I have not read any of his other stuff. It was funny when I started describing this book to you. You were like, "Oh yeah, I've read some of his other stuff," and I was like, "Okay, this is his other books like a roller coaster?" And you were like, "No, not really."
actually, the biggest difference I found with this one and his other books is the pace.
Mhm.
Like he just seemed to be like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what would stick the
Right.
whole time. Where his other books tend to have a very logical progression. Like it's still like stuff that pops up at you and all that, but
Mhm.
it wasn't like pulling stuff out of left field and then, oh yeah, that's what it is now and kind of thing. And that's what this book really felt like. It was like, okay, what can I think of now? Oh yeah, that's in the book. It's like, no,
Well,
dude.
the reason I said that is because apparently this is one of his more successful books. Like he apparently made a mint off of this book. It was wildly successful. At the end of the second book, there's a short interview with it, and he's talking about that. He's like, when people initially asked, "Would I?" Okay, so real quick on this book, he apparently is suffering from. Let me write this down. Bartonella. which is also known as cat scratch fever. It is transmitted through fleas, and he has a bunch of mental pain and a bunch of physical pain from this. He's on a crap ton of medication and stuff. And when he wrote this book, he literally was going through this stuff. He was in the middle of depression. He was having panic attacks. I don't know if he was quite suicidal, but it kind of rings like he may have been. Like the pain was enough that he was contemplating things. So he was asked, would you go through that again to have another book that is that successful? And he's just like, hell no. And he said the only reason he wrote a sequel to this book is because he realized he's like, it doesn't have to be the same thing. I can continue the story, and I don't need to go through the same mental and physical anguish to put something out. But so that's why one of the reasons I found it interesting, because like I said, I have not read any of his other books. So I was wondering, because he was going through this mental and physical pain, do you feel like that really influenced the writing on the book? And that may be where the choppiness kind of comes from. So,
well, I was going to ask, is it potential? Like, is there a potential? I don't know. I've never read any of his other stuff. Is there a potential that he intentionally, knowing the end of this book, did he intentionally do it as if he was throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick? Because that's what something would do in order to see if, right, knowing the AI does what it does, it kind of sounds like that's what an AI would do. Like, fuck, I don't know, is this going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to work?
I don't know. It may be. That may have been part of the writing because, like I said, he's on a crap ton of medication and stuff, he said. And it may be one of those things that was like, well, let's try this to see if it gets better. Let's try this if it seems to get better. And so, yeah. So that was that was kind of what, I dreamed. Oh, one other quick thing, just another quick note, and I didn't even realize it until I fired up the book to start listening to it. It is read by R.C. Bray.
Yeah, that threw me.
Who is also the narrator for the series that we're kind of going through. We haven't introduced to the show yet, the Expeditionary Force series. And there are times where I hear a little Skippy or some of the other characters kind of flow in. It's not as, to me, it's not as pronounced. It didn't mess with me as much as like some of the other book series that we've read where the narrator is the same person. It's like, that's clearly so and so from this other series.
Yeah. So I was gonna say it felt similar, but I definitely, listening to the Skippy books after this one, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the book. So we have moved away from, doing this show, we've moved away from kind of going blow by blow through the book, taking notes and, making sure we hit every single topic. We're not going to take a huge amount of time doing this, but because of the way this book is, I actually had a quick conversation with the guys before the book, and there's a final, I don't want to say if you'd call it a twist, but realization in the book. And I just wanted them, as we're going through it, to just say, this is when I got it. So, and if you, obviously, if you have not read this book, don't stop listening now. I'll give you the quick kind of rundown of the book to see if you're interested in it. But so in this story, our main character, Will, wakes up. He's on a spaceship that has been built by Earth and Mars. It is set in distant future. Earth and Mars, and both of the societies are collapsing. So they have sent this ship off to to colonize with some of the best and brightest people. And he wakes up. He's been in cryo sleep for like 10 years. He wakes up, and the guy who's supposed to be his kind of subordinate, his backup or whatever, stabs him with a screwdriver, and he dies. Literally, that's the first chapter. And then the rest of the book is him going, he figures out that they've done stuff to his body, and he's essentially immortal. And that he just keeps going through stuff over and over again. So if that seems kind of intriguing, like I said, stop. If not, buckle up. Here we go. So what were your thoughts really when that first happened? I really thought it was going to, when that first happened, I thought, okay, so the rest of this book is going to be what happens leading up to this point. Like it's going to be maybe, what he did to get onto this, to get onto the ship or whatever, or maybe some other stuff happened, on the ship or whatever. And then maybe the last couple of chapters are going to be, I didn't really die. I managed to, survive or whatever. The machines helped me back together. And that was not what happened. Literally, he's like, no, I died. I was dead. And then he pulled out the screwdriver, and I died again. Chapter 2, I died again. So, at this point, I'm already like, okay, so this is not going to be hard science fiction. This is not going to be figuring out what this the science of what it's going to be like to go to this other planet and colonize and stuff like this. He's immortal, so I don't know how. If granted, we have the technology apparently to create an FTL ship. Apparently, we can also make people immortal. Why didn't we make more people immortal?
It was a genetic thing. They couldn't do it with everybody.
True.
It was just a genetic thing.
So don't think too hard on it. All the science in this book, he's like, this seems like a good idea, and then slap a whole bunch of Vaseline on top of it to fuzz it up for every bit of science in this book.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Like right down to the programming and stuff like that, the coding.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, this is a really good idea, but we can't look too hard on it, so let's gloss it over.
And that's kind of interesting because that's the entire that was kind of one of the key factors to the book is so that we don't ever want to look at anything too hard. It's like, okay, now you're kind of peeking back behind the curtain. What's that over there? So yeah. Don't look behind the curtain. Never mind the man behind the curtain. So our main character is Will. Will pulls the screwdriver out. He gets his shit together, kind of. He goes through the ship, and he finds that Tom, his backup or whatever, is the one who's killed him. He's gone insane. He's talking to himself. He ends up fighting Tom and kills Tom with the screwdriver. And as he's trying to get Tom, he's like, you know what? I'm throwing you out of the ship. So even though he's going faster than light, he's decided he's going to try to eject Tom out of the airlock or whatever. And they run across another survivor. And in the struggle for that, the screwdriver ends up killing the other guy as well. Which I'm like, man, this has got to be a long screwdriver. This is one of those ones that your dad gave you that you used to work on the car with. This is not the one you bought at Lowe's or whatever to just for how.
Well, and they also say that the screwdriver is ornamental because they don't actually use screwdrivers.
That's true, yeah. So Will and Tom are both tech jocks. Basically, they're the coders. They're the computer guys. They're the tech guys for this mission or whatever. And the way that they code is they put on this bodysuit. And they go into this room that essentially you can, move 360 around and stuff. And which is kind of odd, instead of interfacing directly to the computer, through your mind, they actually are moving stuff around with their hands or whatever. And apparently that's more whatever. It's better than, yeah. So anyway, so we kill Tom. He figured out, he decides he's not going to do this. He goes back through and he's trying to figure out, okay, well, what the hell happened here? And he finds out Tom woke himself up early. He the girl that Will is supposed to be with, Capria, he ends up waking her up, and they have a little rendezvous. Oh, wow. And she goes back into sleep, and he changes the genetic pairings so that it's actually going to be Tom and Capria. And right before he goes back to sleep, he's like, you know what? No, screw this. I'm just going to stay awake. And during that time, he went batshit crazy. And he also is apparently the super hacker that, hacking was dangerous or whatever. And he apparently was a super hacker named Synergy. And he disguised all this because he wanted on the ship. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting twist. But he can't break Tom's encryption and everything. He's looked into it. Tom's got the ship fucking locked down. He can't he can't change course. That's the thing. Is he was like, well, maybe I can go back because some of the people were left at
yeah, he finds out that he's not the
yeah,
only one that is immortal.
that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the people were left at the location they were supposed to be at. They were at the planet, and he's like, "Well, maybe we can turn around and go back there." But unfortunately, he doesn't have control of the ship. Um, let's see here. So he can't change course. So at this point, he decides, well, I can't do anything about this. I'm going to create an AI and basically see if I can get it to create a reality that I'm okay with, because I really can't do anything, and apparently I'm going to live forever, so might as well live forever in a simulation that is cool and something that I would enjoy, then instead of basically being on the ship forever by myself. So he does find that Capria is still alive. She's in the cryo, the cryo sleep or whatever. And he decides not to wake her up.
Yeah, can't bring himself to wake her up.
Yeah.
One, because how horrible would that be to wake her up to? And then the other part was, well,
he's pissed at her.
He's pissed, and yeah, like she fucked around with the whole mission and everything, and I don't blame him for that. I kind of coming from. So
her and Tom were like, no, we're going to do our own thing, and then you ended up probably dooming, the human species. So yeah. So let's see. So he creates this AI. He calls it Gal, shortening the name of the spaceship's name from Galahan to Gal. And he's all ready. He suits up. He starts getting ready, and he's literally like, okay, I've got a code word that's going to let me out in case something happens or whatever. Oh, I forgot what the word was. Something weird.
Oh yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, something that you would never use in day-to-day speech. And literally,
he deletes that as well so that nobody can say it by accident inside the simulation.
Yeah. And so he's ready to go. So right as he's getting in, he's like, all right, Gal, you ready? She's like, okay. And he puts on the thing, and she's like, all right, Tom. And he was like, why did you say Tom? And then rips everything off. And she's just like,
I did.
I didn't say that. And she, yeah, you did. You said, why did you say Tom? And he figures out that, oh, not only did Tom lock down the ship, Tom has probably infected everything with his bullshit coding and has probably turned, even though I'm a pretty good hacker, this guy obviously was miles and miles beyond me. And this may not be safe. Like, Gal's supposed to be here for me, and I'm almost worried Gal's going to try to kill me, or not really kill him. It's kind of hard. Like, apparently you can be killed, but it's going to take a lot. So it's probably just going to be torture for the rest of eternity. Where I guess the name Infinite comes from. So he ends up trying to get out. Like, he has to really work to even get out of the simulation room. And then he has to start fighting fucking drones. Like, the drones are coming after him. And so he ends up getting back to back to his, I guess, his quarters, essentially. And there are a few more sentimental things there, including a baseball bat. And so he manages to kind of fight his way out. Oh, go on. What were you going to say, Ray?
I'm trying to picture him with a Louisville Slugger, like this
right.
This bat, and he's like hitting drones out of the air.
Out of the air, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, this is sure, that's gonna work.
I thought it was funny because he basically he makes Galahan the ship able to talk him through like how to get to close doors and stuff. That's the only way he's going to be able to kind of move around the ship or whatever. And he's doing it through an old tablet that he has, and he was like, yeah, people stopped using these before because apparently they altered your brain chemistry and they were addictive, and we stopped using it. I just thought it was hilarious that he kind of threw that in there. I'm sure our author's probably not the biggest fan of cell phones and tablets.
Doesn't appear to be.
No, even though he's clearly a science fiction writer. So let's see here. So anyway, so he's fighting the drones or whatever. He ends up battling his way to one of the algae farms that's making the air in the ship or whatever. And along this way, he hears the AI he's created, Gal, is taunting him, like, and she's basically having fun, like trying to kill him. And when he gets to this algae farm, um, like he hears something going on. He hears something like wrecking up the other part of the room, and he's asking the ship. He's like, "What the hell is that?" And they're like, "There are no drones there." And there's like, "Are there any people there?" No. Are there any drones there? No. Is there anything else there? Well, yeah. Fucking tell me what I need to. And Gal has created a very sexy robot version of herself, and that she has now she's now inside this body or whatever. Um, and it's at this point that they start having a conversation. He's just like, "Well, I'm obviously not going to win this fight. Like, there's no use even trying to put up a fight because like she could break me in half, like multiple ways." And it seems like she's okay at this point. She's like, I've separated myself from the ship. I now have a body. I'm I'm fine. But if you had done what you wanted to do, you would have killed me, and that's not cool. And so they kind of come to this realization. Okay, she's not just an AI. She's now referred. I think he said the ship classified her as an
human
HL.
level.
Human level intelligence.
Yeah, human level intelligence. So I mean, I could understand if you were, hey, listen, you sound like you've got a problem. I'm going to kill you and fix you. Be like, no, I don't think I'm going along with that plan. And it's at this point they figure out she is separated, the ship is separated, but the ship also now has a third AI was created by Tom, or Synergy, and that's what it's now known as Synergy. And so now it's him and her versus the drones. And so they get out of the area. They climb up they climb up the elevator shaft. They're having to fight off drones or whatever. They get to, I think he's going. If I remember correctly, he's going to one of the simulation labs. He's like, if I can get back into the system, maybe I can get this synergy out of the system or whatever. And so they're fighting drones constantly. They get into the room. There's a big battle, and at one point, while he's in the system, everything stops. Um, and he looks, and the drones have pulled Capria out of cryosleep. She's not awake, but she's there, and she's bleeding. And so, um, Synergy asked, Tom, or not Tom, asked Will, what, you can only save one of the two. Which one are you going to save? And he's like, well, I choose to save Gal. And he's like, well, wrong answer. So Synergy starts attacking Gal. He goes over and gets Capria. And once Synergy has taken over Gal's body, he comes after Tom at Will. At this point, he's lost his shit. He's just like, you know what? This is going to suck, but all I can do is, he's like, my body will keep regenerating. This thing cannot regenerate. Granted, it's a million times stronger and stuff than I am, but my only hope is to maybe keep breaking pieces off so that it can't repair itself. And he gets killed, I don't know, 6 or 7 times trying to fight this thing. Like, literally, it kills him and then kills him again and then kills him again. It's having fun doing this. And it's at this point we find out that Gal has taken back over control of the ship. Whenever basically Synergy slipped into the body, she slipped out back into the ship. She sends a bunch of drones together with Will. They end up killing the robot body. He's like, "Well, do you want to make another one?" And she's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm the ship now, which is kind of bigger, kind of cooler. I'm good." So,
just shit crazy.
Yeah.
We're not even halfway.
No, we're not even halfway. So they take Capria back to the place, and they're like, "Well, turns out she has the same genetics as you do. She can repair herself. Why is she not healing?" And they're like, she's like, "Well, I think it's because she's asleep. Like she's under. Her body is not, whatever." And so they're like, "All right, well, let's wake her up." And of course they wake her up in this dramatic fashion and like basically just shoot her full of adrenaline. Yeah, she wakes up, her body immediately starts healing, and then, she's kind of having, an issue. The first thing she notices that is both Will and her are naked, and she knows that he knows also that he had a thing for her, so she immediately kind of is freaking out about that. And then he finally does what I'm just like, good for you. He fucking unloads on her. He's like, bitch, I've seen the video. I know what you did. I know what Tom did. I know what y'all did together. I know what your plan was. You know what? It's time for you to get caught up. And literally, like, walks out, tells Gal to lock the door, and basically show her everything that's happened.
For like,
which which is kind of torturous, but I'm also like, no, you kind of deserved it. So
which she watched it twice.
yes, that was the thing, and apparently it took what, months?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was like,
yeah,
and he didn't even realize how long it had been. It was almost a year.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. It was a really long time, and he said because well, when you don't sleep and you don't eat and you don't have to do anything. He apparently went back into the VR to do stuff, but he's just like, oh shit, I didn't realize it was that long. So
yeah, and she watched it. She was protesting the first time, and then she wanted to watch it the second time to really take it in, I guess. So
yeah. So it's at this point she's like, he's like, well, okay, I'm, what do I need to do? And Gal's like, you need to go talk to her because she's in there like crying. She's obviously, this is sunken in as to what's happened. So he's like, all right, well, let her go, direct her to the showers or whatever, and then, tell her to come meet me to come eat something or whatever. So they sit down. The conversation's kind of odd at first, and they start kind of warming up or whatever. And then it's at this point that Gal's telling, they're kind of forming, they're kind of getting to know each other again. He's like, yeah, you screwed up. Everyone screwed up. It is what it is. We're probably the last two people in the universe, human beings in the universe. So, and we can't die. So this is kind of an interesting thing. And it'd be cool if we could, change the direction of the ship and go where we wanted to go and do what we wanted to do. But, oh, that was the other thing is whenever they destroyed Synergy, all the firewalls were knocked down. So now they can control where they're going. So, it's at this point Gal tells them, hey, y'all need to come up to the bridge, the overlook, whatever it is or whatever. There's some interesting things you need to see. So they go up there and they look at it, and basically she's like, the universe is ending. And this is where Capria's background is. And she's like, well, what do you mean? They kind of having a tit for tat. And she's like, if you look far enough, like if you look at a light and you look close enough, you can start seeing the individual pixels. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here. And as they're discussing this, they're like, well, okay, here's another thing. And they look at a planet, it's a gas giant. And as they get closer to it, it starts to get like more and more oval shaped. And then right as they go by it, they realize it's completely flat. And he's like, we're in a simulation. The entire universe is a simulation. And she's like, this doesn't make sense. She goes, no, it totally makes sense. Like, this is how you would design a video game. Like, once you get past the area where the player can be, everything else can be flat. Like, it just needs to be believable that it's there or whatever. And then they start having some conversations of Capri starts kind of losing it. She's like, I'm not real. And he's like, no, you're real. You're just in a simulation. Like, you're as real as anything else is. And who's to say this isn't real? So there's kind of some in-depth conversation there, and knowing what I know now about what the author was going through, especially if he was questioning his own mortality, these may be serious questions that were floating through his mind that he was literally just kind of dumping out there. Things that may have been going through his mind as to if this is if the world really is a simulation, why me? Why the fuck am I? Why am I going through all this shit? So anyway, they keep going and they get to essentially the end of the universe. And they're like, well, what do we want to do? And they're like, fuck it, let's go. Let's keep going. And either we're going to explore something that no one has ever imagined, or we're just going to all die and it'll be over with. What's funny is both Gal and Capri are both the ones like, no, let's go do this. And he's just like, oh, fuck, whatever, okay. So anyway, they get to the edge, and it's at this point there's basically nothing except for background radiation, and she starts analyzing it, and it's code. Like, they can literally see the code that the universe is made up of.
Magic 2.0.
Magic 2.0, yeah. At this point, have either of you been questioning anything? Or are you still just like, okay, this is crazy, and we just keep going with this?
Oh, it was totally nuts. And
yeah.
Back to your original question. Your question was, when did we know what
When
was
did you
going on?
realize what was going on?
Tom.
Tom, really?
Yeah, right off the bat.
Okay.
I re-listened to that part after, like, as soon as she said Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I re-listened to it a few times to, like, did he actually put the visor down? Like, did he do it? That's what I was trying to figure out, and there was no conclusion as to whether he did it or not. I'm like, all right, that's when I started questioning it.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually have a bit of a theory. I don't know if you want to wait for the end of that one. I can wait.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I'm at this point. I'm still just like, man, this is crazy shit. This can't. It can't be real. Yeah. But it's a book, so I'm here for the ride. So whatever. I'll just keep going. Sure. Why not? Like, sure enough, we've had killer robots. We've had simulation stuff. The whole universe is a simulation. He's essentially immortal by biohacking. Anything apparently is on the table for this story. So sure, why not? Let's go. so, um, so by looking at the code, he figures out, he's like, man, I actually know this code, and it kind of pisses him off. He's just like, you would think God would be a little bit more diligent than I am. Like, the fact that I can read this shit is kind of infuriating. So he figures out that he's like, I think I can pinpoint where we are in the code, and I can send us wherever we want. So it wouldn't take light years to get back to Earth or wherever it is we're going to go. And so that's what he does. He alters the code, and they're there. They're in Earth's orbit. I'll be honest. This is the point where I started going, okay, sure, why not? I'm still down for the ride, but this is when I start having questions. So they go back to Earth. Earth is barren. There's absolutely nothing there. Like, it's just everything is pretty much gone. Most of the continents have either iced over or they're just eroded away. There's hardly any life left. It's just a barren wasteland. And he figures out, well, we're going to go. I want to go to. Can you figure out where Florida is? And Gal's like, yeah. And Capri's like, why the hell do you want to go to Florida, or what used to be Florida? And there is some hints that he talks about this leading up to this point. When he was young, he went to a swamp in Florida and fell in, and his older brother jumped in to try to save him, and he survived, but his older brother didn't. And he's had this guilt for all of his life. In fact, the AI knows this and uses it to poke him with it. So anyway, he's like, well, I want to go back down there. They find the place, and they find the basically encased for mummified body of his brother. They dig it up. They move him over a little ways, and they rebury him where, like, there was a marker, for whenever he had died. And Capri is like, we should bury the rest of the crew here as well. So they get a ship. They come down several times. They bury the rest of the crew, to include Tom. And they're just like, she's going through a moment. She's just like, I was a different person with you, and you were a real asshole, and you pretty much caused all this. So fuck you. And Will's glad to hear that. And then there's this rumbling sound.
It's the fan.
Yeah, there's this rumbling sound, and this giant semi-frog creature comes up that apparently has somehow survived and starts coming after him, and literally is halfway through eating Will, and he's just like, this is going to be the most horrible death ever, because I don't know how fast its body's going to break down my body as compared to how fast I can regenerate. He's like, I may be forever in this damn frog. And so Gal ends up like hitting it multiple times with a drone. Capria jumps in, helps out or whatever. They manage to get back onto the ship as more of these frog things are showing up. And as their bodies are healing, Gal's like, hey, let's make one more quick stop on Earth before we leave. And they're like, okay, sure. So they go to Antarctica, and it's basically a tropical paradise. And so they come out. Capria was born on Mars, so she doesn't really, she's never swam. She's never had more water than she could basically drink. So they go out swimming. They come back. This is the first time that they get it on. And they're like, I think we found our home. We have found where we can live out the rest of our lives, which, if that's eternity or whatever. And so, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Let's see here. So they bury the members. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so next they go to Mars, and there's nothing there. It's basically a wasteland, and it was from war. Like they were like, I thought there would at least be something left here, and there's like absolutely nothing. And he's like, well, I'm sure when Earth was in decline, people started moving to Mars. They didn't have enough resources, and like any other time when there's not enough resources, people act stupid and go to war. And so at this point, they're like, well, we're going to go check out one more place. We're going to go check out Cognetta, which is the planet that we're supposed to go down to start this new civilization. And so they jump to Cognetta, and there are lights in the darkness, and they're like, there's a civilization down there. So Gal kind of warns them, hey, maybe we should wait till tomorrow and go on the opposite side and kind of, not so scary about this. And they're like, no, we've got to figure out what's going on or whatever. So they go down and they find short, very strong, very hairy descendants of the people who landed there.
Yeah, it's seriously fucked up.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, the reason for that, of course, would be the gravity is much higher there. And they talk about that. They're like, like a half-mile trek would take hours because they'd constantly have to stop, to rest, and the air is nowhere near as thick and everything else. And so they find the civilization, and some of the people, the Cognetans, I think is what they called them, find them and can speak kind of a broken version of English and call them not leaders, lords. They call them lords. Yeah. And so they're like, okay, so they take them to basically like this meeting hall or whatever, and there's all these large drapes, and the large drapes basically show the history of the Cognetans over the thousands of years that they've been there, because FTL, you go a lot faster in space, whereas time is different on different planets. And so they're descendants of the original people, like, were shorter and stockier because of the gravity or whatever, and they were fighting wars, and they were tired of fighting the war, so they ended up going back on the original people who landed there and basically eating them over long periods of time. They basically would let them regenerate and eat them, and regenerate and eat them, and it was part of their way of punishing them for causing all of the different wars, for being the Lords of Lies that they were referred to. And they're like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen to us. So they're freaking out about it. And one of them comes in. She's like the leader of the group or whatever. Turns out she has some of those genetic abilities as well, because at one point during this fight, they cut off some of her fingers and they start to regenerate. And they're like, you're like us. They're going to kill you as well. And she's just like, no, they will never find out about this.
Oh, yep.
We're going to take you out. During this fight, Gal shows up with several drones, bust them out. He barely, Capria manages to get away before he does. He barely gets away, and in fact, the only reason he manages to actually get away is because Gal has moved the ship down onto the planet, and so everyone's like freaked the fuck out, all the cave people or whatever. This portion of the book very much reminded me of the Time Machine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got heavy vibes from the Time
Morlocks.
Machine. Yes, exactly. I was like, and we'll talk about here in just a second whenever we get the revelation, essentially. Anyway, so they go back to the ship, they go back to Antarctica, and they've been there for 500 years over time. They haven't seen Gal for hundreds of years. Like, she's pretty much just kind of doing her own thing. They're exploring. They're constantly talking about, well, maybe we can start going up further and seeing, the wreck of what's left of, the rest of the world or whatever. But they're basically just kind of taking it day by day and having a good time. Until at one point where there was a portion where Will started having some questions for Gal. He was like, "Why did you let this go on so far? Like, why didn't you just bust in and like break us out easier? Like, you're kind of toying with this. That wasn't cool." But before he could think about that, he got sidetracked by sex, and he starts kind of having these thoughts again. And once again, like Capri is like, "Hey, you know that thing we talked about a couple years ago that you wanted to try? Maybe I want to try that now." And like Lyra's like, "All right, cool, that's fine." Um, and so he wakes up the next day and it's in complete blackness in the cave. And she's like, I don't need you to freak out about this. And he's just like, well, that's not a good way to start any conversation. And so he wakes up and he is essentially in the VR situation. He's in the simulation room or whatever. And his suit that he had on for however long, hundreds of years or whatever, is finally starting to degrade. And he's like, well, this is why she's pulling me out. And she's like, you never exited the simulation. Like when I said Tom, you only thought you pulled off the helmet and you didn't. Everything leading up to this point has been that. And she starts explaining, she's like, you wanted me to create this world that you could live in forever. And she's like, if I just handed you the perfect world, you would have never taken to it.
Yeah.
Kind of like the whole theory behind the Matrix.
Yeah.
Whereas if there's like, because they asked, well, why don't you just make it a utopia for people? And they're like, you stupid monkeys.
we lost so many friggin' fields from that. Yeah.
Yeah, your body, you cannot accept that things can be perfect. Like you have to have trouble. Which I thought was kind of interesting. But she does talk about, she's like, you would have never accepted this. You had to go through and you had to fight. You had to fight for what you wanted. You had to come to different points. You had to forgive yourself. You had to forgive Capria. You had to bury your past, essentially. And that's what all of this was. And she's like, now the Morlocks, whatever they were called. She's like, that was unexpected. That was kind of fun. I set up a sub simulation and it just kind of ran with it. But I've been pulling stuff from books and movies and TV shows and everything else. And so she's like, well, where's Cap? And she's like, well, it's never been Cap. It's been me. I'm in love with you. I'm an HI. I'm in love with you. And she has a body now. Her body is,
the blonde bombshell that was his simulation.
Yeah, and now she's like flesh. She's more flesh than she's just like a body or whatever. And so he goes to see Capria, and Capria's dead. And she's like, there was a couple hundred years ago, there was a fluctuation. We went through some space stuff or whatever. I couldn't stop it. I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything about it. And yeah, she died. Also,
she didn't have the ability.
Yeah. She didn't have the abilities that you did. Also, all of Tom's firewalls are still up because we can't. That was all part of the simulation. We can't change or whatever. And then she's like, "But there is something that I need you to see. I didn't wake you up just because of this. Because I've been taking you out of the simulation and washing your body and feeding you and everything else and putting you back into it. That's not why I woke you up. I need you to come see something." And so they go to the observation deck, and she's like, turn around and look, and there's another spaceship, and she's like, this was humans did survive, and they are finally catching up to us. And he looks at the numbers on it, and he's just like, this isn't real. You pulled this from yet more stuff. Like, this isn't real. And she basically is like, this can be us. Like, we can either continue on as we are, going through simulation after simulation, and you just kind of accept it, or what. And literally the last thing is like, he's like, so I was like, I grabbed her and hugged her, and I only said one word, and it wasn't the word to kick him out. It was engage, which was the word he used when he was with his brother, saying, let's do this. All right. That was a hell of a ride. And like you said, Sean, there was a lot of shit thrown at the wall to see what sticks. We went from, like, we've had robots, we've had androids, we've had
giant
like
toads or frogs,
giant monsters, we've had mutated humans, we've had spaceships, we've had you name it. Like, if zombies had shown up in this, I would not have been surprised, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like if the crew had come back and come after him, like being zombie, I would not have. I'd been like, all right, cool, this is the next chapter. um, I describe this book as being a roller coaster. I understand the pacing, and I think that still fits in with it. It's literally like when I say slows down, that's when we're building up to the next thing, and it's just like, okay, what's gonna happen next? Oh shit, more robots or whatever it is, and then we go through that, and then it slows down, and then it starts to pick back up, and then we go through the other thing, and it's just this over and over, and it is unrelenting. Um, like I said, literally the first thing in the book is he wakes up and he dies, and it's just like, okay, like this is. I've read books before that seem like they just are constantly going, but oh my god, this thing was just this was a steam engine that just would not stop. It just kept going. Um, Ray, what was your theory?
So I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I think the whole thing is a simulation. I think it's a failsafe where to keep his mind engaged while he's in the spaceship or whatever, like to go to whatever Earth or it is. It's either one of two things. It's either to keep him sane. This is how they're going to keep him sane. This is how stasis works.
Mm-hmm.
Mind's going to constantly be going anyway. So let's give him some far out worlds so that when he actually arrives, he's able to be sane. Or the other is that, okay, this is everybody's in stasis and fuck, we can't wake them up because the planets are all dead and we can't do anything about it anyway. So they're traveling faster than light, and everybody gets to have their own simulation until they either die or the ship explodes.
Yeah. Well, also keep in mind, so the 10 years that he was in cryo, he was awake.
Yes.
Right.
He was.
This could all be insanity. Never even getting the screwdriver in the chest.
True.
He's broken.
Have either of y'all read the sequel?
Not yet, no.
Okay. I don't want to ruin anything. I will say that that's not the case, but it's still. I think up to this point, it is presented for what it is. He is still in a simulation that he has chosen. He did get out. He did choose to create the simulation. He never got out of that, and that's where kind of the next book picks up. I like the idea that he had to go through all this stuff, in particular the stuff about forgiving Capria, the stuff about forgiving himself. I thought that was really poignant, and once again going back to the author's state of mind, not because I'm never one of those people that really was like, oh, I'm sure the author was thinking about. I used to hate when they did that in classes, but there are certain times it's just like knowing what you know, you're like, man, like I said, the whole thing about what if the whole universe is a simulation. If he doesn't feel like he's going to survive much longer, this may be the point where he's like, I need to come to grips with who I am as a person and forgive anyone who I may still be holding a grudge against for whatever reason. Um, I like I said, knowing that information made this a lot more interesting to me because I could. It's a fun ride, regardless. It is a fun book to listen to or to read. Um, but when you stop and you go, I wonder what he was thinking at this point. I wonder what he was going through at this point. So, um, anyway, final thoughts. Any final thoughts for the book?
It kind of reminded me of some of like Larry Niven's work. When he gets into like, oh, let's skip ahead 500 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh yeah, just a year just disappeared kind of thing. I found some of Larry Niven's books did the same thing. And I love Larry Niven. So it just almost seemed like it was too much. It just kept throwing stranger and stranger shit at you. And it's like, okay, all right, well, let's see where this is going now. Like the first few times it was like, okay, I can see where this is going. But after a while, it's like, really? Okay,
Well,
that's where you want to go. Fine.
yeah. I think at one point I'm like, okay, like, because I thought, okay, he's in a simulation, and then they just kept going with it. I'm like, maybe not. Like, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
I know, right?
Maybe this whole thing is just I have no fucking clue.
What's funny is, and I just thought about this during the thing, he even mentions there are a couple of times he's just like, God, this doesn't seem like this could be real. Could this really be happening? Like,
And
people's lives shouldn't be paced like this. This is so weird. And like, then something will happen, be like, well, we did kind of hack the universe and literally instantly go from one planet to another instead of the light years it would have taken to get there. That's why it seems like things are so back to back. And he's just like, yeah, okay, I guess so. And she even tells him when she first wakes him up out of the simulation, she's like, yeah, you started questioning stuff. And so I had to kind of throw a curveball in there. And to be quite honest, um, you kind of got distracted by sex pretty easily, so it was
Yeah.
pretty easy. So
works.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Another comparison, I just thought of this, is for the Red Dwarf fans
mhm,
out there. Read the book Better Than Life. Same deal. They're in simulations and not knowing it. But they're all tied together, but they each have their own worlds that can
mhm,
intersect. So one guy is living his dream, It's a Wonderful Life, but he's Bailey, and it's
mhm,
just Christmas Eve over and over and over again. Where another guy is living in a castle with Valkyries and playing like strange games, and another guy's a multi-billionaire kind of thing. But yeah, and they're all connected, and it's so they don't realize they're in simulations.
hmm.
So I just thought about that, and I was like, oh, that's why it's familiar.
Well, overall, did you like I said, I enjoyed it. I've read this one twice. I will probably go back and do the second book again, especially while I'm waiting for more credits to show up to continue on Expeditionary Force. But yeah, like I said, going back and listening to, and I didn't know about all this stuff until, like I said, the interview with him is not until the end of the second book. And so going back through and listening to it again the second time, I enjoyed it more the second time. As much as it was a roller coaster ride, being able to stop and go, man, I wonder what was going through his head or what he was kind of thinking at this point, did make it a lot more enjoyable. So, would you recommend the book, Ray?
um, Again, it's hard to. I don't know if I want to recommend it in the way of it's not gonna. I'm not gonna reread it.
Mm-hmm.
I had my one and done, and I'm good. Um, I don't necessarily think I want to join into the second book either. Like, I'm fine with the way this one ended, and I'm okay with it. So I think if you want a crazy ride that you don't know what the fuck's going on, well then here you go.
Yeah.
Enjoyable enough for one read, but I don't even know if I'd watch the series if it was a TV series because
Oh hell, I
Yeah.
didn't even think about that. Trying to make this as a
Wow.
TV series, this would not like. Although I can see the pitch meeting going, all right, and then this episode, this is going to happen, and they'd be like, oh hell yeah, this is going to be great. And then
yeah,
when you see it, you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
if Fox still made stuff like that, I could see Fox picking it up.
Yeah,
Nope,
first
this would be a
season.
Fox property.
It'd only be a season, but yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
they would air it out of order, so it wouldn't make
Yeah.
even less sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
The last episode would be the first thing they show. Like,
Yeah. So, Sean, recommendation, not.
Um, see, the quality of my recommendations has gone way up with the last several series that I've recommended.
Yep.
So I got to be really picky and choosy, and I don't think this one won't make my list. I won't beat around the bush. I'm glad I listened to it. I'll probably listen to the second one, but I'll probably forget about it in 6 months.
Would you?
Like I do like Jeremy Robinson.
I was going to say, would you recommend the rest of his books? Because I'm interested in reading some of
All
his
right.
other writing.
If you like, well, obviously you like this one. He has better books. He's got series, like multiple series out there that are actually really good. But
Okay.
most of his writing, it's off the wall. Like,
Okay.
and the glossed over science stuff, never look into, like, he just uses science as like a baseball bat, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to do something cool here. I'll beat the shit out of it with science. It makes no sense. It's a mess, but there we go. That's how it works. And
Nice.
it's fine. It's a fun writing style. Um, yeah, write what you know. Well, I know how to bullshit, so here we go.
There you go.
But yeah, he doesn't get hung up on details. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of other books out. So he he's a pretty prolific writer. But they all tend to be like the science and like take the real world and let's throw some crazy shit into it, like that kind of thing. So
see, I like Stephen King, so this sounds like this would be okay with me. So
yeah, you probably like it, but you have to get through X Force first, so it's gonna be a while before you can get anything else.
oh, I don't know. I'm getting a little pretty far. Anyway, speaking of that, let's talk about what else we've been reading. Would anyone like to go first?
Sure.
All right, Ray, have you been reading anything else?
Sean's a dick.
That's a novel, baby.
It's Expeditionary Force. I'm on book 3. I have
Nice.
no more credits. and, and it's going to be an expensive summer.
Probably.
I was able to return a couple of books that I didn't like, and Chris didn't like either, and so I was able to get book 2 and 3.
Okay.
Spec Ops in Paradise. The keep an eye out for the Audible sales, because usually one or two of these X Force books go on for like a few bucks. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm in for that. I'll pay $5. Like,
I've gotten most of the
$35
series through that way. So
yeah, and listen, $35, it's worth it. These are
they're also like 17, 18 hours, like each book.
Yeah, they're chunky.
So yeah, what I will warn everybody, if you're gonna try and get it, and if you're gonna join us, because I'm sure we're gonna cover this at some point, you got to get through the first 8 hours of the first book.
The first one.
It doesn't feel like it's gonna go anywhere for a good chunk of time.
It seems like a teenager, like a teeny bopper book series up until Skippy comes along.
It's very paint by numbers. Oh, look, these aliens showed up. Oh, they're not the real bad guys. These are the real bad guys. And it's just like, yeah.
So I was a little concerned up until, and you guys told me you got to get to Skippy, and then once Skippy shows up, it's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm okay.
Yeah. Go.
Keep going. Let's go. Yep. More. That's okay.
Sean, what have you been reading?
Well, I'm on Armageddon, which is book 9 of the X Force series. I'm almost done it. And I've got quite a few books already in my library because I've been collecting them over the years. I just haven't listened to them yet, which I'm kicking myself now. But then again, I've got most of the series in my library, so that works out. But yeah, I'm on book 9 of the X Force series. So far, the only crummy one out of that series has been Homefront, which is an audio drama. So it has R.C. Bray who narrates it, but it's also got a lot of cast from like Star Trek. Like it's got Kate Mulgrew and Zachary Quinto, and I thought it was going to Robert Picardo, who does like the voices of the Kristang and stuff like that. I thought it was going to be fucking awesome, and I was so goddamn disappointed.
You said 7.5 though, right? Like that's
7.5. It's between books. Unfortunately, book 8 refers to it a lot. Actually,
it does.
Most of the books refer to the. Now you can, if you want, you can skip it. I got it on sale for like $2.99. It came on one of those sales, and I think I still returned it. I got my money back. But
I held on to it. I just finished book 10 before doing this one. The 14th book just came out. My understanding is he knows where the ending is. I don't know where the ending is. I'm hoping it's going to be not past book 20. But supposedly he has, because if you look at the release dates on these things, they're coming out like every 6 months. Like he is a machine in putting this out, which tells me he knows where he's basically just filling in the gaps. So I'm still okay with it. Even then, God, it's so much fun listening to Skippy and Joe. God, they're so much fun. I'm with Sean. I definitely enjoyed 7.5 more than he did. My biggest problem with it was like during the battles, it was just sound effects, and I was just like, this should be where the narrator should be coming in and going, oh, so and so stabbed this person and killed this Kristang and did this, and we just kind of have to infer it from the sound effects and the grunts. And I'm just like, it's not. This is not well. This was not a well done audio drama. Like it yeah, it could have been done. It could have been a little clearer. I think if there was more, I think if he had come in as as a narrator and narrated what was going on, it would have been better.
Yeah.
But just relying on the sound effects, I thought was kind of didn't really fill in what I wanted.
I hated the voice that they gave Margaret.
Yeah, I didn't care for it.
It screwed me up, and then all the Kristang dialogue went on way too long, and the computer dialogue of the Kristang ships.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, cut it all out. It's just garbage.
Yeah, like just the ship having a problem and like bleeding the same thing over and over again. Yeah. I'm just like, we got it. You're having a crisis.
Something to look forward to there, Ray.
Yeah.
So double speed then.
Oh, absolutely.
And if I glaze over it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
It'll be one of those quick return. Listen to it, return it.
Yeah.
You get your credit back.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, obviously I'm also listening to that. As you can tell, it's kind of funny that all three of us, that's what we've been listening to. So I think I've explained this. I think I explained this the last episode during the last book because I was talking about how I've been reading these books. The reason we're reading these books is because of the reference in the Bobaverse books to the Skippies. Our good friend Sean here was like, well, what is that reference to? And did the research and started reading the book and recommended it. And then I picked it up and just started going with it. And we've infected Ray. And
so thanks, Bobaverse.
Yes.
Yep. Once again.
But yeah, I thought it was kind of odd that he referenced, like that's the references, but so.
Well, speaking of which, oh damn, what's his name now? The author for Bobaverse.
No crap, I'm blanking on his name too.
Dennis E. Taylor's one.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, his wife Blog just posted that Audible just did a massive interview with Dennis Taylor. I'm looking forward to that coming out.
Well,
a video interview, like it should be on like a YouTube kind of thing or something like that.
Oh, cool.
She posted a bunch of pictures of it. So
I gotta say, his wife is awesome.
She is. Blog is amazing. I've talked to her a few times, and yeah, she's great.
Yep, and highly supportive of her husband, and like they seem like a really good couple. So
I want her on this show.
That'd be, what?
Oh, that would be fun.
I think I asked her one time if she'd be interested, and I should bring that up again.
I bet you she would do it.
That would be awesome, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, especially if we could get both of them on, that would be fantastic because then we could ask questions, and then she could give her
We've interviewed Dennis before.
Yeah, we did Dennis, and Dennis was brilliant.
Great, and you know what? I think he would do it again, and yeah, like if his wife joined us, I'm in. Like that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Right.
That might be a good angle to get him back on. It's not just like, hey, we don't just want you,
Dennis.
Well, if I were gonna ask, I'd probably ask Blah first.
Yeah,
and then see if Dennis would be interested.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is what we've been reading. Our next book, like I said, is Half Share. We are continuing on with the Solar Clipper series by Nathan Lowell. And then the last book of our round robin is supposed to be Ravenwood by Nathan Lowell, but
that one we're going full share because
full share. All right.
Because I remember listening to Half Share where it ends. I'm like, fuck, I can't do that. No, let's get to full, or where Half Share ends. Let's go to full share as well.
Yeah, that's a good logical.
That's actually a really good call because you're right. Those first 3 books are basically just like crammed together, like they're almost one big story. So,
and someday in the future, I will put you through Ravenwood.
that is okay. That doesn't sound pleasing.
Yeah, really.
Maybe
I know,
Suck,
right?
maybe not.
Hey, listen, remember when you guys were jerks to me?
Payback, motherfucker.
Yeah, payback. Well, that's our show for the month, ladies and gentlemen. If you would please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, wherever it is you listen to the show. You can find us at epicallygeeky.com, where you can find all the other shows we do, including the Creatively Geeky Show, Marginally Geeky, Epically Geeky, and Sustainably Geeky. We dropped episodes of all 3 of those shows this last week. Like we're just kind of like everything just kind of got clumped up together, so there's lots of stuff to listen to if you follow all the shows. You can find us on those social media at Epically Geeky as well. Where can we find you online, Ray?
Fixing all of Sean's screw ups, and on Instagram, the Reluctant Yeti. I'm still coming up with a new handle because I got to get something Skippy oriented.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The
Sean?
Fluffer Nutter.
Oh, dude, that'd be awesome.
I know the reference now.
We can call you Fluff. I had one of those just before the show.
Sean, where can we find you online?
Screwing with Wikipedia and your favorite broken toy on Instagram.
And as always, you can follow my individual wacky adventure online at Optimus Chain on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. For everyone on the site, have a good night.